Growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, gamers debated what was better, Sega or Nintendo, but I was one of those kids that ended up liking both. And since I've been talking about the launches of the Super Nintendo and the NES, it's now time to talk about Sega and the Sega Genesis, which launched in America in 1989 with 6 titles at the launch. So without further ado, here is my personal ranking for the 6 games that launched with the Sega Genesis. I'm one of those kids that really enjoyed playing sports games and learned a lot about how the sports worked by playing video games. Tommy Lasorda Baseball is the earliest example of a Sega Genesis sports title. While the system would go on to have some of my favorite baseball games of all time like World Series Baseball and Triple Play, Tommy Lasorda Baseball wasn't the best. It was an okay baseball title featuring that awesome amazing cover art of Tommy Lasorda, and the game was also known as Super League outside of North America. It didn't feature Major League Baseball licensed teams or players, and did feature though a 30-game season. Overall, Tommy Lasorda Baseball is, well, just an okay baseball title. Fist of the North Star is awesome, but here in North America, we got a lot of the games, but without the Fist of the North Star license. A good example of this is Last Battle on the Sega Genesis. It plays similarly to the NES classic of Kung Fu, where you control your character and just kind of punch and kick your way out of every situation, sending enemies flying all over the place. It has some pretty challenging boss fights and lots of levels to actually take on. It's not the best of the Fist of the North Star style of games, but Last Battle was a decent entry. While I'm a big fan of Sega's arcade games, one that I wasn't as fond of is Super Thunder Blade. It had a very similar perspective to Space Harrier, which I ended up loving, but in this one you're playing as a helicopter, blasting planes and tanks, but it does have 2 perspectives, both the behind the helicopter and the above, both through scrolling style levels where you have to take on a whole army of enemies that are coming your way. While it's still pretty fun, Super Thunder Blade is just one of those arcade games that I just never really got into. There's a lot of great shoot-em-ups on the Sega Genesis, and kicking off that genre was Thunder Force 2. This had horizontal scrolling levels, and then also top-down, more free-range perspective levels, which I never really was the biggest fan of. But the horizontal levels with lots of great power-ups and boss encounters with some good music to go behind it, and it reminded me a lot of the Gradius series as well. Thunder Force 2 may not be the best of the shoot-em-ups on the system, but it was a great way to start the genre on the Sega Genesis. One of my earliest memories of Sega was actually playing Space Harrier on the Master System, and it instantly became one of my favorite games. So years later, when I saw Space Harrier 2 on Genesis, I had to get it. I think it was the bright colors and awesome action that drew me in. It was very similar in design to Space Harrier 1, but provided, of course, new levels and new bosses and plenty of difficulty to go along with it. I spent hours upon hours trying to work my way through Space Harrier 2, and it's still one of my most fondly remembered games on the Sega Genesis. I remember playing Altered Beast at a friend's house early during the days of the Sega Genesis and loving the game. The action, the co-op, being able to turn in the different animal forms, especially the bear, and it wasn't necessarily a very long game, but no matter what, I just kept going back to it, and to the point that I begged to get my own copy, and ended up with a copy of Shadow of the Beast 2 instead, which I was a bit disappointed by, but I still ended up liking that game. But when I finally got Altered Beast, I then spent more and more hours putting into it, mastering the different patterns, and loving every moment of it. Altered Beast is an absolute classic and one of the best early games on the Sega Genesis. So there you have it, my personal ranking for all of the launch games in North America for the Sega Genesis. What are your favorites of this list, or how would you end up ranking them? It took a little bit for Europe to actually get the system, but it actually arguably had the best launch lineup, featuring Cullums, Golden Axe, and Alex Kidd, but didn't have Last Battle or Tommy Lasorda Baseball, though I don't think too many were complaining about that. It would be a little bit till we ended up getting Sonic and made Sega a household name in the home console market, but I will always love the Genesis. But anyway guys, that's going to wrap up this ranking video. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course I hope you enjoyed.